Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Can everyone hear me at the back? Ladies and gentlemen at the back, we're still okay. As I mentioned, my name is Atlamandatsane, and I welcome you all to the fifth installment of the Bhaktivedanta Swami lecture. So, I'm an alumnus of the School of Mechanical, Industrial, and Aeronautical Engineer. So, right here in these proud halls of the good school, business, I feel right at home. Just a couple of announcements before we begin. So the bathrooms, you just exit. Upon your exit, you just turn left and walk down to the passage. After the canteen, you will see the bathrooms. At this point, I request everyone to please turn their cell phones to airplane mode or to silent. In the event of an emergency, which is unlikely, you can just use these exits here, right here at the base of the lecture theatre. Also, our program for this evening. So we'll begin with the introductions. Dr. Singh, the representative of the managing trustee of the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, will address you. There will also be a representative from the Alumni Association of the Good School of Business, Dr. J. Punwasi, followed by the keynote speaker for this evening, Dr. Edith Best. There will be a question and answer session. Thereafter, we will adjourn for a networking session. On behalf of the African division of the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, I extend a warm welcome to you all. So we have quite a few distinguished guests in our audience this evening. Firstly, the executive management of the Good School of Business, headed by Professor Imran Banyoda. We have attendees from the South African Government of Department of Justice. We have an attendee from the South African Reserve Bank, Dr. Naidu, representative from UNISA, Professor Naidu, also from Ramtha Auditors, Mr. Karun Naidu, from Engine, Mr. Luvani, the CEO of Santa, Mr. Koma, representative of SABC Education, Ms. Sureka Singh, representatives from Atlas Finance Corporation, Mr. Dani Halfon, Mr. Norman Laubowitz, Dr. Kolapan, welcome you all. Also to the captains of industry, investment bankers, engineers, also leaders in social justice from various humanitarian groups, we also extend a warm welcome to you. A special welcome to the 3 direct students of A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami who are present this evening with us. His Grace Medavi Prabhu, His Grace Nandakumar Prabhu, and a special welcome to our keynote speaker, Dr. Edith Best. So in the 2,000 plus distinct languages of the African continent, a special welcome to you. Rakwamukela, Alkom, Yan Benu, Haland, Bika, Akwaba, and many more. Ladies and gentlemen, the topic of this evening is, does education work for everyone? This question, and among other critical questions in human development, in establishing peace, culture, and prosperity, are ones which the Bhaktivedanta Swami lecture series have been attempting to answer since 2013. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, in whose honor this lecture series has been named, quite boldly explained that human beings are distinguished from animals by the capacity to pose far-reaching questions that probe the mysteries of cause and effect in all spheres of life and life itself. The life of A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami was dedicated wholly towards this end, and educating others on how to fully blossom as human beings. At this point, I'd like to call upon the Executive Trustee of BBT Africa, Dr. Mani Singh. Dr. Singh is a business science academic who has served on numerous public and private sector boards. He has also served as an executive on listed and unlisted private companies, and is currently serving as a managing trustee of BBT Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Singh.
Respected members of the academic community, captains of industry, ladies and gentlemen, and students. On behalf of the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, which is the world's largest publisher of books on Eastern thought, and in collaboration with one of Africa's most prestigious business schools, I would like to thank each one of you for your attendance and participation this evening. While education is intended to improve the productive power of labor and to sharpen human skill, dexterity, and judgment, our education platform appears to circumvent a valuable aspect of human development. Man's innate ability, that capacity to think and question, makes the human mind a valuable instrument, capable of introspection and rationale. The human brain is the most complex structure in the universe. No other brain in the animal kingdom is capable of generating the kind of higher consciousness associated with human ingenuity, with our ability to make plans and write poetry. Thus, we must sweat this human asset, the human brain. We must use this heavy and sophisticated human machinery to pursue a higher purpose. The human mind is a powerful and valuable apparatus given to man. Our hope, and indeed the hope of the entire human society, lies in its better application. The world as we know it is in dire need of navigational leadership. Great leaders not only direct their gift of knowledge southwards to their subordinates, but they push the boundaries northwards of the status quo. Today, our once thriving capital system seems to have faltered, particularly here in the Republic of South Africa. We live in turbulent times where uncertainty is a pervasive feature of life. Education is our only hope. A hope that we can expand the size of our thinking beyond the pages of the textbook, beyond market indices and beyond economic data. Bhaktivedanta Swami noticed this, that we are missing an important link in our education. Bhaktivedanta Swami pointed out that our educational instruments have failed to seek something beyond this boundary of circular knowledge. He suggested that there is something more that is more worthy of research and debate. While capital formation, economic indices, and spreads are important, a more striking and immediate individual reality needs to be addressed. Of course, by stature, Bhaktivedanta Swami was a small man. Yet he was rated by CNN to be the 32nd most influential person of the 20th century, one person behind President Ronald Reagan. This lecture is being held in his honor. The BBT was his brainchild. Today his books are published in over 90 languages. It seeks to bring an ancient message to the forefront of human thinking. From global offices in Beijing, in Perth, Los Angeles, Stockholm, Rio, and here in Johannesburg, the BBT is the biggest publisher of books on Vedic thought. As a matter of fact, somebody on the planet receives one of Bhaktivedanta Swami's books every 3 seconds. He had a unique ancient perspective on knowledge systems and education. Today we will hear from one of his direct students, Dr. Edith Best, a brilliant scholar, a social thinker, and a living representative in the tradition that Bhaktivedanta Swami came. Dr. Best hails from New York. She's from a Jewish background. She became Bhaktivedanta Swami's student in the early 70s and is a sought-after international speaker. Dr. Best, we are delighted to partner with you. We're delighted to have you and to collaborate with the Wits Business School to have this important conversation. Of course, we cannot date when education started. We can, as patriotic South Africans, participate in the conversation that could lead to a more informed education for our children. Eastern education places emphasis on the value of forests, the value of oceans, the importance of an ecological mindset, and sustainable living. It's a vast body of knowledge that talks to subjects and about subjects that can augment the current body of research knowledge within the discipline of learning. So on behalf of the BBT trustee, Bhaktivedanta Swami, who could not join us today, we would like to thank you and welcome you and look forward to your participation. Let's have this conversation. Thank you very much.
So this venue has over 200 persons, and if you do the math, that's 600 seconds. So the duration of this talk means that all of you can actually receive a book of Bhaktivedanta Swami. Somebody has received a book of Bhaktivedanta Swami. So thank you very much, Dr. Singh. I'd like to call upon a member of the Alumni Association of the Wits Business School, Dr. J. Punwasi. Dr. J is a medical doctor by profession. She's a Master of Business Administration by dual specialization and is involved in a variety of activities here at the Wits Business School. Please welcome Dr. J. Punwasi.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As an executive member of the Wits Business School Alumni Association and a representative here tonight, I am honored to welcome each one of you to the 5th Annual Bhaktivedanta Swami Lecture. It is indeed an honor for us to partner with its prestigious organization as the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust. As one of the leading business schools in Africa and a center for thought leadership, Wits Business School believes it has an important role to play in both the individual education of our students and the collective education of business communities. This is why a key part of the vision of the school is to become a leading center for academic and public discourse, debate, and dialogue on issues facing us as a country and as a developing economy. Events such as this one encourage discussion, spark ideas, and challenge perceptions. They open the channels of communication and help us to strengthen the ties between universities, companies, government, and civil society in support of developing a deeper understanding of our socio-economic contents, both locally and globally. It is a fact, unfortunately, that inequality and unemployment are rising in many developing economies, especially our own. Unemployment in South Africa remains as one of the most pressing issues. It reached its highest mark in 13 years in 2016 and now stands at 27.1%. Education lies at the center of socio-economic development. It is essential for the survival and sustainable development of both South Africa and Africa as a whole. We simply cannot overstate or underestimate its impact in our continent and in our country specifically. But is this the only answer, or a solution amongst many? And in what form will it be most beneficial to us as a society, our country, our continent, and the global community? I leave our expert for the evening to discuss these pressing issues and provide insights on the topic at hand. On behalf of everyone present here and the Wits Business School, I would like to give Dr. Bess a proudly South African welcome and thank her for sharing her time, expertise, and knowledge with us here tonight. I hope you all have a splendid evening here at the school. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Punwasi. And now, to the heart of the matter, at this 5th installment of the Bhaktivedanta Swami lecture to Dr. Edith Best. So Dr. Edith Best earned a Master of School Administration and Doctor of Education from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Edith is a professor of religion and sociology at the Bhaktivedanta College in Belgium and has 3 decades of experience teaching primary and secondary students, which include 19 years of experience as a school administrator and leader. She and her husband founded and co-founded 3 schools in the US. Edith is the author of the groundbreaking literacy program, Dr. Best Learn to Read, an 83-book complete literacy program with natural language processing technology, enabling the storybooks to be told in over 25 languages. She has also authored Vaikuntha Children, a guidebook for devotional education. She is also also the author of The Great Mantra for Mystic Meditation and dozens of articles. Her latest book is called Sri Manashiksha, Splendid Instructions to the Mind. Since 1990, she has been an associate editor of Back to Godhead magazine, an international spiritual journal. Edith is also chair of the SAC, an advisory committee on matters of scripture to the international management of the Hare Krishna movement. As co-founder of Padma Incorporated, a non-profit organization, Edith helps organize and fund programs to restore and daily maintain ancient heritage sites and holy sites in India, as well as provide meals to destitute women there. For over 2 decades, she has been developing and teaching international seminars to managers and teachers. Her work has been directed and inspired by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. She formally became a student in the practice of Bhakti Yoga in 1973. Born in 1955 in New York City, Edith married Mr. Howard Best in 1973. They have 3 married children and 14 grandchildren. In 1996, Edith and Howard took vows of asceticism. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Dr. Edith Best.
Thank you very much. It's very nice to be here today. Thank you all for coming on a Thursday evening. So we're looking at solving the disparity of prosperity with education and goodness. Education in South Africa is in trouble. Demands for free education have rocked the country. South African students in primary and secondary schools score near the bottom in academic achievement when compared to other African countries or to the world. Certainly, many of the problems stem from apartheid. Few, if any, new democratic governments have had to work with an education system as flagrantly and intentionally inequitable as the one that the apartheid regime left to the new black-man government in 1994. For example, laws such as the Bantu Education Act of 1953 were designed to keep black children from getting training in jobs that were not allowed to them under apartheid. Post-apartheid, the National Education Coordinating Committee developed policy aiming for truly democratic, non-racist, non-sexist education. However, today, poor and struggling South Africans feel that fee structures for higher education continue to prevent them from achieving their hopes and dreams or reaching their potential. Too many students fail exams or drop out of school, and a white child is 6 times more likely to gain admittance to a university than a black child. The problems do not seem to stem entirely from money. Mandela arranged to give more funding to schools in poor areas than in wealthy ones. And today, South Africa spends overall about 1.5 times the percentage of its GDP on education compared to the average EU country. In a report in May 2016 by John Volmack, a dearth of qualified teachers and a lack of government oversight were identified as the main problems. Volmack primarily blamed the South African Democratic Teachers Union for poor teacher quality. Others have identified the curriculum itself as the problem and introduced outcomes-based education instead of subject-based curriculum. But the outcomes in primary and secondary education often have few links to workplace or tertiary education needs. Trying to implement outcomes-based education where the outcomes are a matter of debate is problematic in other countries as well. Although CAPS is certainly an improvement, the basic difficulty of deciding on outcomes remain. Certainly, having high-quality teachers along with frequent assessment of education is essential. Leadership to ensure that assessment leads to specific improvements is also necessary for any education system. But maybe something is wrong with the entire premise of modern education that tweaking alone will not solve. The focus on economic development has led to staggering levels of inequality across all nations, and education is often seen as the bridge between these inequalities. However, the notion of education being the panacea for this gap is fast becoming known as the education myth. The myth of education is that if a person simply gets a higher and higher education, that person will achieve a high-status job, economic prosperity, and happiness. Hausman explains that statistically speaking, higher levels of education do not translate to higher levels of prosperity for society overall. He writes, quote, "Clearly something other than education is needed to generate prosperity." Looking at the situation in Micronesia, Hetzel notes that education does not necessarily mean a good job is even available on an individual level. One great misfortune of the industrial view of education and economic systems is that it cannot guarantee economic opportunity even for highly educated individuals. And even if one does find employment, will one be satisfied? Around the world, 87% of all workers are dissatisfied or disengaged with their jobs. It is straightforward to assert that youth are educated to earn a livelihood. However, what seems straightforward and obvious may not be so in fact. Despite the best intentions and advancement in knowledge, one may get results contrary to what one desires, as the Srimad Bhagavatam predicts. Albert Einstein encapsulated the essence of the difficulty when he said, "No problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it." What created the disparity of prosperity is called, in the Bhagavad Gita, a lack of goodness. The Gita tells us that when passion or delusion overcome goodness, we think in terms of friend and enemy. Greed, oppression, and exploitation are then generated. Education in passion and delusion creates a mood in the oppressed of desiring the place of the oppressor, the place of the exploiter. Thus, when passion and delusion predominate, historically speaking, oppressed and oppressor change places. But an overall culture of peace and prosperity does not occur. Quote, "But almost always during the initial stage of the struggle, the oppressed, instead of striving for liberation, tend themselves to become oppressors or sub-oppressors. The very structure of their thought has been conditioned by the contradictions of the concrete existential situation by which they were shaped. Their ideal is to be men, but for them, to be men is to be oppressors. That is their model of humanity. The solution of this contradiction is born in the labor which brings into the world a new being, no longer oppressor, no longer oppressed, but human in the process of achieving freedom," unquote, by fear. Indeed, the very problem of oppressed becoming oppressor is evident historically in many societies, and South Africa is not exempt. Sepe noticed in 2001, in reference to Fiore's general observation, quote, "Progressive legislation and pious political pronouncements are rarely matched by a change in attitude or a new consciousness at both the personal and political level. Instead of the struggle achieving the liberation of both the oppressed and the oppressor, it has simply replaced the oppressor. The oppressed are assuming the role of the oppressor," unquote. Today, Sepe notes that evidence of real opportunity and equality in higher education continues to be a rare exception. An education that subtly primes students to usurp the position of the current exploiters is untenable. Everyone cannot become an exploiter, as doing so is a logical impossibility. For education to solve the disparity of prosperity, it needs to be an education in goodness. We suggest that goodness can ultimately be best understood in the realm of morality, philosophy, and theology. After all, the spiritual is also intrinsic to learning, including the most secular of learning, even in the opinion of non-religious Western educators. It is thus fitting to look for definitions of goodness in a work such as the Bhagavad Gita, which elaborately describes three modes of nature: goodness or illumination, passion or attachment, and delusion or ignorance. The effect these modes have on human behavior has been demonstrated in empirical studies that have concluded, for example, that those in the mode of delusion are more prone to depression and anxiety, whereas those in the mode of goodness are happy. To understand the importance of goodness, we can look at the Sanskrit word for goodness, sattva. Sat means truth, eternal, and real, along with good. In other words, what is good is what is true, enduring, and real. Goodness means what is in alignment with the design and function of the universe, of the earth, and of our bodies and minds. Now we will examine some key symptoms of goodness overall and look deeper at 3. Identifying all living beings as fully equal and glorious individual souls, cultivating awareness of the unity of all beings and all things, and appreciative nurturing of the infinite variety in this world as part of the divine. Both knowledge and happiness are key symptoms of goodness. By knowledge and goodness, we mean an understanding by which one knows what is to be enacted and what is not to be done, what is to be feared and not to be feared, what binds one and what frees one. A person in goodness will feel mentally satisfied, be self-controlled, honest, wise, clean, not unnecessarily violent, and will speak only what is both truthful and beneficial in such a way that others are not disturbed. The first of the 3 main areas of goodness we will examine in depth is identifying all living beings as fully equal and glorious individual souls. The overriding problem in South African education is racism and racial designations determining a person's primary identity. A person in goodness has both theoretical and practical understanding that each individual is ontologically the same substance and value as others, and so does not think one being better or worse than another on the basis of bodily distinction. A person's present race, nationality, gender, and so on constitute a set of designations unconnected with spiritual identity. When a person's knowledge is in passion or delusion, in contrast, he or she will usually think and feel that certain races or nations are inherently better than others. It is such a lack of goodness that causes prejudice, envy, hatred, and most wars. Let us look, therefore, more closely at what is meant by a spiritual identity beyond the body. There are 2 basic words for self in Sanskrit, the original language of India, as well as the language of philosophers and theologians there today. The first term is Atma or Atman, and the second is Jiva, or both words combined as Jivatman. The former word is defined as the soul, the individual soul, self, oneself. The latter's definition, derived from the root jiv, to live, is the principle of life, the vital breath, life, and soul. The individual or personal soul enshrined in the human body and imparting to it life, motion, and sensation, life, existence, creature, or living being. Satrapa sums up the definition of jiva, quote, "The verbal root jiv means to live, be, or the noun jiva refers to the individual living being or soul. According to the Vedic analysis, the living being jiva is separate from the body, yet within each and every body, including those of humans, beasts, and birds, an individual soul jiva resides. Individual consciousness is the symptom of the jiva's presence," unquote. The relation of the self to the body and mind is that the self animates both. The next area of goodness we will consider is the awareness of the unity of all beings and all things. A person in goodness acts with the awareness that all living beings are part of the Supreme. There is unity as all beings are in God, and God is in all beings. By seeing God everywhere and seeing every being in God, a person in goodness always feels the divine's presence and has a deep sense of connection to all life and all creation. This mentality is described in an older Veda, the Ishopanishad. There it is stated with reference to the Atma, quote, "One who always sees all living entities as spiritual sparks, in quality one with the Lord, becomes a true knower of things. What then can be illusion or anxiety for him?" Unquote. The connection of all jivas through the Lord is the basis for real community on a universal scale. The concept of Ubuntu, of community defining the individual, and the individual existing to serve and respect the community, thus achieves its ultimate expression on the spiritual platform for persons and societies saturated with goodness. As we understand from the first two areas of goodness, goodness gives us living realization of our spiritual identity beyond the body and oneness as part of God. Our third area of goodness is appreciating and nurturing the infinite variety in this world as part of the divine. A consciousness in goodness thus creates respect and abundance. In contrast, the racism still inherent in much of South Africa's education aims for suppression of difference. For example, since the end of apartheid in '94, epistemologies and knowledge systems at most South African universities have mostly remained rooted in colonial, apartheid, and Western worldviews and epistemological traditions. The curriculum remains largely Eurocentric and continues to reinforce white and Western dominance and privilege. Jacobs calls the settlement between the apartheid regime and the African National Congress, quote, a series of political, social, and economic deals in which the racial inequalities of apartheid and wealth disparities largely remain intact, quote, and which does not benefit the majority black population. Parity in prosperity, however, comes because education in goodness celebrates individual diversity. The beauty and function of creation come from the infinite variety of talents and natures, each of which has a role in the universal body. When humans receive education and training in their natural propensities, as well as how to use those tendencies in service, abundance results for all. The Gita explains that while each embodied Atma has inherent talents and qualities in terms of body and mind, still it is nurture or association with others as the all-important factor in how our talents manifest and develop. Thus, without an education which reveals and develops a person's nature, that person may never make a full contribution individually and collectively. Talents may be neglected, or they may be used in ways that harm individuals and society. Therefore, knowledge and goodness does not imply that all be treated alike, or that the temporary external differences of body and mind between individuals have no meaning. In fact, those in goodness celebrate and nurture individual differences, both spiritual and material, as essential to both beauty and function in creation. Each soul is unique in his or her relationship with God, as well as in taste, character, and personality. Those in goodness perceive and welcome diversity because the ultimate spiritual individuality of each living being is eternal and real. Combining the three principles of spiritual identity beyond the body and mind, the unity of all beings, and the fact of individual talents and natures brings us to the ultimate goal of education. That is, all persons develop and discover their real identity, and they use their qualities to dynamically increase spiritual love for themselves, for all of the living beings, and ultimately for the Lord. Indeed, love is the basic principle of happiness. Several studies point out that loving relationships are the prime indicator of a person's lifelong happiness, health, and overall life fulfillment. Through this love, expressed both spiritually and through materially differentiated education, Ubuntu can become realized in every aspect of South African culture. We would like to recommend 3 specific practices to bring about goodness in education. We suggest these techniques of spiritual life to be an integral part of all education programs. These techniques will bring about harmonious values and an end to imbalances in society. The 3 are meditation, whether individual or group, a sanctified vegetarian diet, and differentiated instruction. All 3 create goodness in individuals and society, while specifically differentiated instruction demonstrates goodness. The most important is daily meditation. Schools have discovered that meditation practices can replace detention and other disciplinary procedures, or even render them much less needed. Some schools in South Africa are having excellent results by including meditation as part of the school day. While most forms of meditation and contemplative practices can bring people to some state of goodness, the Vedas recommend as most efficacious meditation using a mantra or prayer, and with consciousness focus on the Creator or the Super Self. While such meditation is most fruitful if it is of a personal theistic nature, it does not need to be sectarian. In other words, pupils and teachers can meditate using mantras, prayers, or names of God according to their own religious tradition. Those without any theistic conception can meditate on the universe as a supreme deity, as explained in the Srimad Bhagavatam. The rivers are the veins of the gigantic body, the trees are the hairs of his body, and the omnipotent air is his breath. The passing ages are his movement, the clouds which carry water are the hairs on his head, the termination of days or nights are his dress. Meditation can also be done in the form of group singing of sacred mantras or any prayers that include names of the divine. Such group meditation is particularly easy for children as it can involve musical instruments and dancing. A second crucial technique involves diet. The Bhagavad Gita teaches that food can help or hinder the development of goodness in the human being. Food that results from violence, such as meat, fish, and eggs, and psychotropic chemicals, such as caffeine, all hinder or even prevent the development of goodness. What is perhaps fascinating is the connection between a vegetarian diet and a just society. Motana posits that vegetarianism symbolizes finding harmony and respect in a post-colonial and post-apartheid society in South Africa. Bailey suggests that racism has a parallel in the meat industry and proposes that a repudiation of racism should include vegetarian diet. We recommend that ideally, students be served locally grown, organically vegetarian meals cooked by persons who are filled with love for the children. In addition, have time before eating to sanctify eating. Such sanctification can be done by an offering of the food to its creator with affection, or at least meditating on how the food is a transformation of sunlight, water, and minerals due to the loving grace of a universal intelligence. Food should be eaten with respect and honor for this miracle of nourishment, and with a mood to use one's healthy body to increase love for God and all living beings. The third technique of individualized or differentiated learning is an important way to show respect to each person as equal soul and to help nurture and honor individual talents. Doing so honors the Ubuntu of each person contributing their ideal to form a community. Even if we are primarily interested in addressing socioeconomic imbalances by giving every citizen an opportunity to participate in society through education, the production line mentality of learning needs to be abandoned. As Dr. Frederick English says, quote, "The use of any manufacturing model in schools ultimately fails because nearly all operate on the assumption that somehow inputs can be standardized. With human beings, such an idea is absurd. Education cannot only not standardize people, but if education is effective, it leads to greater differences between students, not less. Thus, effective education quickly becomes destandardized in practice." Unquote. Differentiation is part of a climate where the goal is to challenge all students to their optimum levels, not just minimum standards. Transforming teachers in this way will, in the words of Dr. Banks, quote, "help students to know, to care, and to act in ways that will develop and foster a democratic and just society." If these three techniques for goodness are instituted, then assessment can include related outcomes. For example, teaching students that the real self is not the body should result in the elimination or significant reduction of racism and prejudice. There should be no hatred for anyone. We will produce learners who see the true equality of all beings and thus demonstrate deep empathy. Further outcomes are character traits of those in goodness, such as fearlessness, charity, self-control, willing, loving sacrifice, nonviolence, truthfulness, freedom from anger, tranquility, aversion to fault-finding, compassion for all living beings, freedom from covetousness, gentleness, modesty, steady determination, vigor, forgiveness, fortitude, cleanliness, and freedom from envy. Those who live in goodness will experience deep inner peace and joy above material circumstances. The measurable behaviors of this inner tranquility and happiness are better sense and impulse control, deeper loving relationships, clarity of decision-making, and equal vision of all living beings. In summary, in this presentation, we have examined the struggles in current South African education and looked to the myth that education aimed mostly at increasing prosperity and occupational opportunities will solve long-term disparities in the society. Rather, that myth perpetuates the idea that it is the responsibility of individuals to pull themselves up to the level of opulence they desire by studying and working hard. But statistics show increasing education rates and levels do not grant jobs and wealth in direct relation to one's education. Disparity of prosperity remains, because when the consciousness of education is in passion and delusion, the oppressors try to keep their position, and the oppressed often aspire to change places with the oppressors. True prosperity for all can be found when our consciousness and actions are in accord with what is true and real in creation. That state of being is called sattva, or goodness. Persons and communities in goodness identify all living beings as fully equal and glorious individual souls, are aware of the unity of all beings and all things, and appreciatively nurture the infinite variety in this world as part of the divine. To attain that state of goodness individually and collectively, we suggest individual and group meditation, a sanctified vegetarian diet, and education differentiated according to individual talents and nature. Measurable outcomes and goodness need to be as much a part of outcomes-based education as our intellectual, social, and occupational areas. The implementation of such techniques of spiritual life is not meant only for formal education in schools. To achieve the highest expression of Ubuntu in South Africa, each individual should become a repository and a teacher of goodness. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Edith Best, for that wonderful exposition on how we can achieve the goodness in education. All of you came because of a question which we asked. We asked, does education work for everyone? And as you heard, Dr. Edith Best has given you a very concrete framework for how it can be achieved. It can be achieved through delivering a differentiated form of learning, and through these three concrete recommendations of meditation, sanctified vegetarian diet, and disregarding this manufacturing model in schools, but actually recognizing the individual needs, interests, and concerns and talents of each of the individuals. In this way, we can actually realize Ubuntu in all spheres of South African culture. But of course, I'm sure many of you have some objections to that. Many of you may have additions. So at this point, I'd like to open the floor and to questions. So we have
Particularly objections.
Yeah, so Dr. Best really likes objections.
That was his word.
So do you have any questions from the floor? Please raise your hand. Okay, the gentleman.
Thank you. Norman Liebowitz from Atlas Finance. Your concepts, is it integrated with the education? I'm just using maths as an example. Is that integrated into the process of learning the numbers game, or is it an add-on, a standalone?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. Perhaps you saw there was a regular movie put out recently, The Man Who Knew Infinity. Did you get a chance to see that? I would really recommend it. And it was about one gentleman who was practicing himself in these principles of goodness, and was able to, by that development of goodness, understand the basic underlying principles of mathematics, and he really revolutionized the whole mathematical world. So I'd say that it's integrated, it's not an add-on. Excellent, excellent. Thank you.
Another question on the floor? Yes, to the lady in yellow over there.
I just need some clarification. You mentioned that vegetarianism is one of the keys to goodness. So Are you trying to imply that all vegetarians are good?
No.
Another question? Maybe there's one question down here. Over here, is the lady next to the laptop? Okay.
My name is Dr. Colopin. Education has been viewed as that which is innate in all beings, that the institutions of education should truly bring out the goodness or the qualities that is already latent in each and every one of us. That the idea of Ubuntu, the idea of that there is just one consciousness, there's just one world, there's just one air, there's just one set of oxygen, there's one set of rivers. So therefore there must be one definite purpose for each individual in the world, which is to spread one's greatness to others. How would education, which is skewed to trying to make people believe that monetary value through education, that become a doctor, lawyer, or business guy, whatever it is only skewed that a monetary value brings about some kind of change, whereas it is truly refining the individual that brings about the prosperity as well as the greatness in others. How do schools start doing that? Because we believe that teachers have to acquire that first in order to bring that out in individual students. How do we do that in a society where we start educating the educators?
How do we start making the change? Well, hopefully we're doing that right here and right now. That's what we're here for. When we have discussions like this, when we look at those principles, when we say, wait a minute, what is education just about earning money and getting ahead in the rat race and taking the position of an exploiter? Is that what it's really all about? Or is it really about recognizing our own divine nature and coming to the ultimate expression of who we really are? Of course, we need to earn a living. I mean, that's there. But is that all there is? It would be something like saying the only thing you have to do to be a good parent is give your kids food. There's a lot more than that. But I think we're starting right here and right now. And many of you in this room are very influential people in society. Things start with just talking about them and doing them in your own sphere of activity. What was it, Margaret Mead, who said, you know, all changes happen by small committed groups of people. Don't believe it can't happen.
Another question? Down here.
Evening, everyone. I'm Noloisi from Standard Trust. Dr. Edith, you mentioned that South African education is in trouble. What's more imperative to transform? Is it primary, secondary, or tertiary education?
Ooh. I don't know if I even want to answer. Do we have to just pick one? Is that a rule that I can pick one?
Not necessarily.
Okay, well that's good. Can I just not?
It's entirely up to you.
You know, it's really interesting because I spent most of my professional life in primary and secondary education. And I remember once being with a meeting of educators where one person got up and said, look, let's just stop talking about primary and secondary, put all the emphasis on tertiary education, and if we just educate the educators, that'll be a trickle down to primary and secondary. And I walked out of the meeting and I said, that's it. It's got to look at everything. You know, if you're just focusing on tertiary, then what, you're going to wait until those kids get to be 18 years old before they get a decent education? You know, people are in need right now, wherever they're at. And I see that we have to aim this at all levels simultaneously. I would prefer not to put a priority on a particular age. You know, I mean, we can look at crucial, I mean, if you're going to get into psychology, you're going to get into developmental psychology, you can say, crucial ages in human development are like age, birth to 4, 2 to 5, and then you look again in early puberty, like 12 to 15, and you can look at those at really crucial ages. But it's not that you want to say, well, 8-year-olds aren't as important, or something like that. That wouldn't make sense to me. I couldn't legitimately go to somebody and say, well, no, we're going to put all the resources into this level of education. Forget it. Sorry. In the back, yeah.
My name is Norman Mpake. Within the education sector, we normally talk about education being a societal issue. But then, in turn, society has a tendency of wanting to give education in its institution. And that institution at basic and primary education is within a government space. So when we have to talk about issues of goodness and politics, it's what they call an oxymoron. And so that's one of the areas that
I happen to have some friends who are in politics and they're in goodness. So.
I wouldn't be distancing myself from it because I'm talking from being part of the system.
Okay.
But in essence, when we say it's a societal issue, but society has a tendency of saying it's their fault if it's not working, and that we as a society have not defined what we want out of education. So the question says, why do we have education? And we want to identify it within that institution instead of us defining it as a society. It becomes a contradiction of our objective. So we could pursue that goodness, but we have to be willing to be part of that solution and being part of that institution and not being them versus us. And I'm assuming from anything in society, if we were to try and work as meaningful partners instead of partners of benefit, then we might have a better solution to a broader conversation around education.
Excellent one. I agree with you completely. Anybody else?
Good evening, Dr. Desi. My name is Shameen Naidu. I'm an educator, so I have special interest in the topic that you've discussed this evening. My question is, many of these recommendations that you make are deeply entrenched in an Eastern philosophy, culture, or religion. How do we break through the barriers of cultures that are averse to or prejudiced against Eastern philosophies and allow them or encourage them to adopt these recommendations that you suggest?
Well, thank you for asking that question. So, as was explained earlier, this lecture series is put on by the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust. And the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust is, you're saying, the largest publisher of Eastern thought in the world? Yes. So, we are here today. The express purpose of this meeting is to show how the wisdom of the East can help all of humanity. And you're saying how to deal with prejudices. Well, in one sense, the wisdom that we're presenting is not really geographically bound or culturally bound. People may see that way, but it's not. That every living being is a soul has nothing to do with whether you're in India or Indonesia or in Africa or in Brazil or in Canada. It means you're a living being, you have consciousness. It's the basic principle of existence, the basic principle of truth. Anybody can examine, what am I? Am I really this body? If we're this body, well, everybody in this room was at one point 2 years old. But if I took photographs of everyone here at the age of 2 and put it on the wall, and I said, okay, we're going to have a contest, and let's see if you can match the pictures to the people in the room, it would be pretty hard. And it's not just that our 2-year-old body got blown up like a balloon. It's different. The cells in our bodies have changed. Our thinking, I hope, has changed. I hope. So what's our identity? Obviously, we have some identity that's different from the body. When someone we love dies, the body is there. And we say, oh, my mother's gone, my father's gone. And that happens whether you live in Peru, or whether you live in Russia, or whether you live in Kenya. That's not Eastern. It's just real. And I think one way we try to get over prejudices is by presenting this universal truth as a universal truth. Because that's what it is. And we all do have a sense of unity in the divine, don't we? Isn't everyone aware of that we have a connection? That we're not all just completely distinct and separate people in our own little bubbles? We're connected in so many ways, through our air, through our water, through our food. Sometimes we're aware of that connection. People have the same thoughts at the same time, and you think of somebody and then they call and you're just aware, wow, we have a connection. Sometimes we realize that connection when we look in the eyes of a creature lower than a human being. So this is just truths. The truth that everybody has individual nature and individual talents, that everybody has some extraordinary talent, but that extraordinary talent, unless it's nurtured, unless it's developed, may not come to much. The person may be frustrated. That's true everywhere. It doesn't matter what part of the world you're from or what culture you're from. This idea that certain cultures and certain countries have more of value to offer the society than others is just wrong. And it was that idea that caused the whole white man's burden in colonization. The Europeans had better knowledge and better systems and therefore the right to take over the world. Do we want to take that same mentality and look at all other cultures like that and say, our culture is superior? What do we have to learn from any other culture? I certainly hope not. Is that all right?
So I'm sure many of you have a lot of questions, so we have time for a last question, and it's going to go with somebody in a tie, and no, it's not me, it's a gentleman right there in the front who already has the mic.
Good evening, my name is Bhaktivedanta. I have a confession to make and a question to ask. I confess that I'm one of the people that judge a new idea on how it impacts what is called the modern economy, or how it correlates to it. And the question then is, how does this idea as proposed change any economic system or change an economy?
I think you really need to ask somebody who's in a different
At the break.
I want to thank you very much. And it's really been a pleasure being here.
Thank you so much, Dr. Edith Best. So I'd like to call upon the head of EBT Africa's Corporate Services, Mrs. Kerisha Gobichan, to give the final vote of thanks.
Program Director, our most esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust Africa Division, it's my honor and privilege this evening to extend a vote of thanks to all those who have contributed in one way or the other towards making this occasion possible. We would like to thank Tembeka Shatswayo, the events manager at Wits Business School, and her team for their logistic support, facilitation, and collaboration. I would also like to express our sincere thanks to Dr. Jay Kumwasi for representing the Wits Business School at this prestigious event. To our esteemed guests, we thank you for your attendance and appreciate your support, and we certainly look forward to hosting you again next year. At this time, I would also like to acknowledge and thank each and every one of you for having taken the time to be here with us this evening. Our gratitude goes out to our keynote speaker, Dr. Edith Best. Thank you for a well-researched presentation. It was definitely informative and insightful. At this time, I would like to request Itumalane to come through to the stage. Dr. Best, you can come through. Please accept this small gift as a token of our appreciation for your time and for being an integral part of the 5th annual Bhaktivedanta Swami lecture. Ladies and gentlemen, an event like requires planning and attention to detail in every respect. I would like to thank Dr. Nangin Singh for his inspirational leadership and the African BBT team. We are most fortunate to be supported by a team of very motivated and dedicated individuals who go beyond their call of duty. Thank you to everyone for your involvement and willingness to go the extra mile. We thank His Holiness Jayadveda Swami, the Senior Trustee of the African BBT, for providing us with the opportunity to present pertinent lecture topics that address many social and cultural issues that we face today. We also extend our heartfelt appreciation and gratitude to His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, in whose honor and memory we are hosting this annual event. As the lecture formalities draws to a close, please can I request for our speakers, esteemed guests, and the BBT team to please meet the photographer upstairs at the reception area. We will also be conducting interviews, so kindly avail yourselves for this. We thank you all for being with us this evening. It's been a pleasure hosting you. Please travel safe and take care. Thank you.
If you were to take something from this lecture, what would it be?
I think the theme of the mode of goodness, that was what struck me most. I don't think everybody is aware of what the mode of goodness is, that we operate under these modes. And just taking the goodness out of people and making them aware that they can be good to each other, to other species, to animals, will then create a much more peaceful society and then eliminate what you spoke about, the oppressor and the oppressed, by all of us being good to each other.
What I take from this lecture is that after having listened to Dr. Edith, I think that's her name, I would say that there is a lot of work to do still with regards to having to properly address what it means to what education truly means towards different sectors and different demographics within South Africa. So, and I don't think that was quite touched on and quite explored in as much as I would have thought that the doctor would have liked to.
I love the concept of differentiating of education for different personalities and different strengths. Being a parent, to see your children's strengths, and you hope that an education system would nurture those strengths rather than hindering them.
Real education is changing thinking, changing what we previously conditioned to believe that searching for an individual prosperity is the key to all our problems. Is when we identify ourselves with the greater humanity, when we understand that we either all rise together or we all fall together. Believing that true education is that education that makes me believe that you are important, community is important, rather than the individual person is important.
How did you find the keynote speaker speaking about education?
I found it was fantastic. It was relevant to our South African context. She's American, but obviously she did a lot of research into this particular subject. She quoted a lot of other research, which we just need to find out what peer review was done on that. But I really enjoyed the contextualization of Ubuntu into the Eastern philosophy of the Vedic culture.
I felt the doctor's speech wasn't as well researched as I thought it would have been. Given that I thought she would definitely stick to the topic, and I reiterate that I think she should have delved further into, as an example, the disparities between, the previously known Bantu education, which we see still persistent within the township and rural communities of South Africa. Likewise, the now aptly termed Model C schools, and contrast those two sets of schooling systems with the private schooling education. That wasn't addressed as well as I would have liked to, and those disparities weren't explored and weren't comprehensively engaged with by both the doctor and the relevant audience.
I think it was excellent. I feel that her knowledge and her research into the local education system was really brilliant and very well researched.
I loved her understanding of
ability to put forward that education is about developing character, is about developing that which again refines every individual. The difference between humanity and the animal kingdom is that we have this ability to change. We have this ability to change from day to day.
A lot of emphasis was put on the importance of spiritual education as opposed to material education. What are your views in this connection?
I agree with that because you can see the result of material education. We have a world full of strife. We have people trying to outdo each other in the rat race. Whereas if we understood we are spiritual beings, as she said, we identify that we are not the body, and therefore we should then not worry about ourselves, but worry about the body. We should worry about ourselves, who are the spiritual beings, and then take care of each other. Not fight to climb to the top and get the material things. Have a more equitable society, because we have such a big Gini coefficient in South Africa that the results are there to see. The fees must fall is one symptom of having such a inequitable society.
I thought that's probably where, that was the point that I did agree. One of the few points that I did agree with the doctor, given that, yes, I believe, despite being a student of commerce and finance and economics myself, and therefore, pursuing my endeavor, pushing my intellectual capabilities within the commercial space and being in corporate, on the other hand, I do feel that it is as important to place value on knowledge for knowledge itself, and not necessarily to be able to obtain materialistic wants or necessities, I guess, either or.
I think we live in both a spiritual and a material world, and I think there's got to be a very good balance of both. I think, we've got to know that we do live in a material world, but there's got to be that balance of the spirituality as well, and I think maybe that's what's lacking in our current education system.
Well, we are only spirit. There is no separation between spirit and materialism. Materialism is just another form of spirituality. So when we address spirit from the very beginning, that we are spiritual beings having a human experience and not human beings having a spiritual experience. When we live our lives believing that we spirit and spirit connects everything else, we then will realize that when I hurt you, I hurt me. And therefore, it'll build character rather than building ego and this notion that I can live a prosperous life as an individual.